Am I audible? Okay. Hello, everyone. On the last and final day of semester 3 presentations, I'm going to explore the topic which is Introduction to New Historicism with the reference of Andrew Marwell's poem To His Coy Mistress in the paper of Cultural Studies. These are my academic details, and these are some of the points which I am going to discuss in my presentation. Beginning with the introduction of new historicism, as how this term new historicism emerged and who coined this term. So here you can read the introduction of new historicism. But one point I want to make is that the term new historicism is coined by Stephen Greenblatt in an American historian, literary writer, and critic, and he coined this term new historicism for the very first time. And it is an approach to literary criticism and theory based on the premise that a literary work should be considered a product of its time, place, and circumstances of its composition rather than an isolated creation of genius. New historicists, greatly influenced by Michel Foucault's concept of power dynamics, and come to give another strategy of political reading of the text. The critical strategy adopted by new historicists is quite significant because they give equal significance to the text and an embedded history. So, new historicism is all about that how the particular text, how particular literary text and history are interconnected and linked with each other, and it helps us to see that how they both are connected with each other as well as how it influences each other. Definition of new historicism. New historicism reopened the interpretation of literature to the social, political, and historical milieu that produced it. To a new historicist, literature is not the record of a single mind, but the end product of a particular cultural moment. New historicists look at literature alongside other cultural products of a particular historical period to illustrate that how concepts, attitudes, and ideologies operated broad across a broader cultural spectrum that is not exclusively literary. In brief, new historicists attempt to situate artistic text both as products of a historical context and as the means to understand cultural and intellectual history. So, new historicism is about parallel reading between the literary as well as non-literary text. New historicism and provides us a clear crystal distinction between the old and new historicism. So whenever we are talking about new historicism, we have to see that what was the idea of old historicism and how this new historicist rejects the idea of that old historicism. So in old historicism there is a hierarchical separation between the literary text, while in the new historicism, as I mentioned, it is a parallel study. It involves a parallel study between the literary and non-literary text. Old historicists see history as the background of literature, whereas new historicists see it as a primary. In old historicism, the word of the past replaces the world of the past. In new historicism, the aim is not to represent the past as it really was, but to present a new reality by resituating it. And it is more focused. Old historicism is more focused on historical context and is text centered, while new historicism is more concerned with the interplay of literature, culture, and power dynamics. So about the difference of this old and new historicism. Old historicism see history as the reflection, see literature as the reflection of history, while the new historicism is more concerned that how it is about the interplay of power dynamics as well as politics. How do critics define new historicism? So there are many critics who have defined the term new historicism in their own way, but here I have mentioned the three critics. One is Michael Warner, Frederick Jameson, and Harold Wesser. So Michael Warner, he phrases new historicism's motto as the text is historical and the history is textual, while Frederick Jameson point of view about new historicism is that always historicize, and Harold Wesser, he identifies the moment of exchange as particularly fascinating for new historians. So from this perspective we can understand that new historicism rejects the idea of periodization, and it gives the idea that we have to reject that whatever in the past, but we have to re-evaluating that particular situation, that how it is connected with that historical fact and the text that it was written in that particular moment. Cultural studies in practice. Cultural studies can be applied to literary works through various theoretical and analytical frameworks. It delves into how culture is influenced by social, political, economic, and historical factors. When we apply cultural analysis to specific literary works, it provides valuable insights into how literature both mirrors and impacts culture on a significant scale. Here are some of the approaches to practicing cultural study in literary analysis, and it includes here you can read that historical context, gender studies, and other also. And for that, from that perspective, I have taken the example of Andrew Marwell's poem To His Coy Mistress, that how this poem can be read as a new historical reading. So, a new reading of Marwell's poem, that how we can apply the idea of new historicism or a new historical reading in this particular poem. To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marwell, implied culture versus historical fact. The interpretations of Marwell's poem To His Coy Mistress has known a fate common to many other anthologized, frequently read pieces. There is general agreement as to its overall meaning, but widespread contention as to the precise ways in which that meaning is produced. Marwell has brought together into his coy mistress from a rather gross, obvious intertextual hodgepodge, using the ancient theme of carpe diem. According to Elizabeth Story Donno's introductory note, the poet blends together a blazon reduced to a bare arithmetical recital of the lady's beauties. Brody points out the concept of implied reader as distinct from the fictive lady who would be able to summon up a certain number of earlier and contemporary examples of this kind of love poem. So, this poem is about this poem, the main theme of this poem is about love, that the speaker of the poem is telling to his lady to don't waste the present time and don't give much importance to the future. So that is why we can apply, and it using the ancient theme of carpe diem. So here the question arises that what is the meaning of carpe diem? So carpe diem the meaning of that word is seize the moment or seize the time, that the speaker wants that particular moment with his beloved. The speaker wants that particular time is seized here, so that he can make more and more love with her lady. So that is why it is about the theme of carpe diem, and the meaning of that is urging someone to make this a particular moment as a freeze. But the question here is that what does he not show and what does he ignore from his culture? So that is our main concern of this poem. That we can see that the poem is about the making love and how the speaker. Speaker expresses his feelings, but what does he not show? That is our primary concern and historical fact of that time. Historical context of the Black Death. So it mentions that Black Death, a devastating plague that struck Europe multiple times. The plague killed millions, and there were recurrences, including the Great Plague of London. From July to October, it killed many persons, and in the course of that epidemic. So when we are talking about, whenever we saw the historical context of this poem, we can see that there were a devastating plague occurred in Europe, and because of that, there were so many people killed in the course of epidemic. So that was the historical context of this poem, and it highlights the tension between the cultural and poetic perspective of the poem, where the speaker can attempt to push off death and the harsh historical reality of recurring plagues, where death could strike suddenly. The real world is completely absent from this poem. So, whenever we are dealing with this poem as a new historical reading, we can see that what is actually present in the poem, that is completely absent, because if we are studying the poem from the initial part, we cannot understand that this is the actual happened during that particular era. So that is why Andrew Marwell is talking about the love situations, but the real world is completely absent from this poem, and that is how we can see that what is implied culture versus what is historical fact in this poem. And these are some of the pictures that how the plague happened in the year 1665, and we can see the harsh reality of that particular era. Towards the conclusion, to conclude, exploring this poem through the lens of new historicism reveals the rich layers of historical and cultural context that influence the poem. Through this analysis, we see that new historicism provides a valuable tool for revealing the hidden meanings and implications of literary works. So that is how we can see that how new historicism provides us a path for revealing the hidden meanings and what was happened in the past, and how we resituating that past in the present moment, and new historicism is the best tool for that. And here are the references which I have taken, and now I am open for questions.
Ethel, my question is how does new historicism balances the study of history and literature in its approach to analyze literary texts within their historical context?
Okay, so yes, a new historicism definitely balance the study of history and literature, but we have to apply that in a literary text also, because if we are not applying a new historical reading in any particular text, that then we don't know that what was happened in the past. We don't know the happen in the past. If, for example, I have, for example, if I can talk that if we talked about the poem To His Coy Mistress, with anyone, everyone will came to know the initial part of the novel, that it is about love and what the speaker wants to convey to his lady. But applying the new historicism in this particular poem, we can understand that how the poem is not only talking about love, but also about the situation of epidemic situation and the plague which was happened in the past. So that is how it balanced the study of history as well as literature.
Heckle, how does New Historicism approach the analysis of literary texts and how does it differ from other literary criticism methods?
Okay, so new historicism, the approach of new historicism is obviously differs from other literary criticism methods, because as I have mentioned, the major difference between the old historicism and new historicism. So in old historicism, we cannot know that what was the actual happening in that particular era. And old historicism see the literature as a reflection of history, while the new historicism differs from that point of view, and it sees the literary text as well as non-literary text from the it is interconnected and linked with each other. So it is definitely this approach is helpful, and as well as it differs from other criticism methods. Okay, so that's it from my side. Thank you very much.